Hey everybody, this is Jeff Plumman. I am the online and digital learning specialist for the Minnesota Department of Education. And I have been hosting a series of web calls to try to connect practitioners who are tech integration folks and online experienced educators with those of us who are transitioning to online or digital distance learning in some way. And today's call, I'm really glad to be here to host the call for John Fila. John is an experienced educator and course designer who works for 287. And he is going to be presenting today on the cost of free. So what to keep in mind when looking for resources. And so John is going to be presenting from his side just some norms for today's call. You will all be muted. If you want to ask a question later on during Q&A time, if you just press the little hand raise button on the participants window. If you're not seeing the participants window, you can go up to the ribbon at the very top of the screen, and it will open up a little ribbon that you can see controls. If you open up the participants window, you'll be able to see at the bottom of that a little hand raise icon, a green check icon to agree, a red X icon to disagree, and a variety of emojis. So you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you would like to talk in this call and ask a question. Otherwise, please make sure that when you chat, use the chat feature to ask questions. Please change the send to from host, which would be the default, to all panelists so that John and myself can both see them. I'll be keeping an eye on the questions as they come in chat. And John, I'll probably, just interrupt you when you take a pause and ask questions if and when they happen. You'll notice we are recording this meeting and we have live captions going. I will also take the entire chat transcript and paste it into the documented resources, which I will be adding again to the chat right now for those of you who are just joining us. But I'm really glad that you were able to take some time out of your busy day today. I know many of you are planning for the transition to distance learning, and I'm excited to hear what John has to say with his perspective. So with that, John, I'm going to go on mute and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. So over the last couple of weeks, I've been seeing a lot of posts sharing free resources, just people asking what's out there that's free. And it may be a new concept for, I think, millions of people now, but there's been a movement around this for over a decade, and it's been evolving in all kinds of ways. The biggest barrier to open educational resources still has been awareness. So now that people are out there looking for them, I think it's finally OER's time in the spotlight here. So often I'll begin with this quote from Dune by Frank Herbert, because I see this as a new beginning for a lot of us. I've been working in online learning now for about 13 years, but I still think that there's a lot we've learned about what works in online learning, and it's time for us to consider this as a new beginning as we move forward. So I really want to take some time and care to make sure that we all have a similar understanding of what's happening here. So want people to have lots of time to pause and reflect and really think about what are the problems we're trying to solve. Because this appeal of free does really strange things to people. It's like the reward center in our brain gets activated, we get excited, we may be prone to some impulsive behaviors. And I know that from working in retail in college, that when you have sliding prices for things and you'll offer up a little bit for free, that'll often encourage people to buy more or sign up for more than they originally intended. So I want people to consider just the sheer amount of energy you're now tasked with putting into this new reality. It's really difficult to step outside of ourselves right now and even contemplate it because there's just so many people that are out there right now in survival mode. You might be there as well. So we want to really think about how we interact with people who are in that space. Make sure people are taken care of before we start jumping into sharing all kinds of resources and talk about what's being offered now that we never could access before. I started out working in an ALC in the 7th through 12th grade program where we didn't have any curriculum when I was teaching English, and I really started trying to see what was out there. And I think if all of these things had just opened up, it would have been really exciting for me to gravitate towards that. But what we're doing right now requires a lot of effort. So the so-called quick, easy, and free might require a lot of workarounds or add-ons, and the workflows that might be okay for some who've been kind of dipping their toes in some of these tools and learning platforms. That's not sustainable or even possible for a lot of educators who just have really almost no experience with this kind of delivery previously. So when we're looking at these offers, I think it's important to consider where the offers are coming from, right? So our email list is just constantly being flooded with all these tools and resources that we've somehow gotten on the list for. And I want people to think about, is this something that it can really help us right now? Is it meant to help us? Or is it part of an advertising campaign for a more long-term subscription? A lot of times these same resources offered some basic free tools. Maybe that was still good enough. And then what problem are they solving for us? Have we really identified what our problems are? So I want to just take a minute before we get into the OER component and just look at what this term free actually means. So I came up with a list of metaphors here, I think. So when it comes to the limited time offers, what then when those months have expired and this isn't going to be free long term? So what does that mean for the students and parents and districts we've suggested some of these tools for? Are they going to come to rely on them in some way, and will we be pulling the rug out from under them as soon as there's a fee attached to them? And then just the sheer avalanche of resources, there's another metaphor for you. How are we even going to choose what's out there when there's just too many to choose? A lot of times choice paralyzes people. So if there are different options, what do we even do with that? And then just an overall lack of vetting. You know, a lot of times during curriculum adoption or tool adoption, this goes through a number of committees. IT might take a look at it. Teacher curriculum groups might take a look at it. Right now, it seems like we're just grabbing everything we can just to save ourselves from falling here. And so you can see that, you know, this topic lends itself to all kinds of metaphors, usually disastrous ones. So when I talk about cognitive load and the energy that people are putting into this, I also want to not just think about it in terms of energy, but time. In every staff survey I've ever seen related to what teachers need, time is the single most requested item. So teachers just don't have it. We're demanding a lot on ourselves with that really limited resource. It takes time to consider how these resources and tools can be integrated into our objectives, or is our understanding of what objectives means changing now too? We want to be spending our time on something that we may not be able to use moving forward. What's the consequence of that? So we put our time and energy into something and then we don't have it anymore. Does that build anger, frustration, resentment? Do we start looking out for people to fund our wish lists or GoFundMe campaigns so that we can keep using them after this? It's not sustainable to continue to pay for them when everybody's choosing something new. So I think this can actually harm learners. So when I talk about accessibility and curriculum design, consistency is a really important factor. Consistency in navigation, in layout, design, user experience. You choose something or a particular way of using it, what happens to your learner when 6 of their other teachers chooses something else or chooses a different pathway? What happens to that learner's cognitive load then? It's compounded if the learner has a disability. So as teachers are racing to figure out what this means, parents are even out there trying to fill these gaps in now too. As we've hit the pause button on classes, parents are out there grabbing onto all of these, trying to make sure that their students don't lose any progress that they've had in a way that doesn't happen, when we've gone on winter break or summer break. So I do want to talk about some long-term sustainability options. So I get that it's one more thing to worry about, but at this point, it's worth some consideration on what could be a long-term solution for us, because this kind of event, now that we know it's possible, may happen again, or this may come in waves, and we may need to kind of turn things on and off based on where the epicenters are. So let's not frustrate learners and their parents with short-term workarounds. It's better to communicate a delay as we figure this out and put something really solid out. So this is a time for us to really do something exciting and change what we've been doing up until now. When we just didn't have the time to do it, now I feel like we have some permission to use some of that time. So just to put out there some groups that have been doing some sharing and collaboration for a while now. The Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum has grown to over 200 school districts in Minnesota. It's a collaborative that sought to meet some challenges that all of us were facing around some changing state standards. We had developed over 40 courses now from grades 3 through 12 in all 4 core content areas to address Minnesota state academic standards. So now that those are out there for people to use as open educational resources, does going back and revisiting that project make sense for your district and put some energy into improving upon those resources and building those up into something that might work for your learners? There is also OER Commons that's been around for a long time, where you can search based on topic. That's one of the big differences between the partnership, I think, and OER Commons has been in the Minnesota Partnership, we've sought to provide entire courses to meet standards, where the OER Commons tends to focus more on lessons and objects. But the idea is that the stuff isn't necessarily what's so valuable, but it's the collaboration between groups seeking to solve some problems that they're facing that has been really valuable. So what we know about OER based on the research is that it's equal to or better than vendor counterparts. It can be used in all kinds of ways. So really doesn't matter what kinds of tools or resources you can use, but you have the permission based on the licensing to modify and adapt them in almost all cases to suit the needs of your learners. I know that at one point we had purchased an expensive product that came to us in the form of an 1,100-page PDF document that was so secure that we couldn't even copy-paste text out of it into a more accessible format for our students. So there are lots of ways that you may get burned by not having that flexibility built into the system. So the terms of use don't often allow you to embed things in your learning management system or share them via Google Docs or rip things apart and build them back into new ways. So being able to have the flexibility of the resource matters. I would also say that early on, when people were just throwing out everything they were working on and calling it OER, things have changed a lot since then. There are millions of dollars that go into the development of these resources now. I can think about some of the objects that are available on sites like Hippocampus, where there's significant funding that went into these tools. So it's not as if they're not polished. These are ready to go, finished products. The simulations from Colorado are another incredible example of some really high quality, equivalent to any kind of vendor resource out there. But the difference is that there are people using these resources and then sharing back the different ways they've been using them. They share back their lesson plans. They share back their standards alignment. So joining that type of community really helps speed up more development. That the collaboration isn't just people sharing in isolation. It's really building off of what's already there and sharing ideas. So when you're looking for OER content that's out there, there are some things to think about. Will you own what you do and make? This isn't just for OER. So when you're searching for any products or tools or even vendor solutions, when you put the time, energy, and resources and money into those objects, what happens when you decide it's not something you can pay for anymore due to budget constraints? Will you own everything you've made to go along with it? If it was we're paying for, probably not. Is it fair with other teachers or other districts? Does it foster collaboration? Is it something that you can just continue to add layer upon layer on? And so one of the things that we're doing at 2V7 that will also come up later, as I show you some examples from our district, has to do with this iterative process where we are building what we can, and then we go back and fix it up again and again and again. So we may have our social emotional learning experts go and add a layer of supportive language and directions to the content. We'll have our special ed experts come in and suggest specific accommodations or modifications to go along with that work. We want our EL instructors to come in and add their suggestions and supports and what kinds of improvements can we make, our accessibility, our consistency and navigation. There's lots of layers we can add to this beyond just the content and assessments and standards alignment, making it better for all learners. And then there's another factor in all of this is when we have all these different tools available to us, what's that like for the kid sitting at a device now or accessing some materials on paper? What do they have access to? Do they have to set up a different account to every one of these tools that we want them to go check out? When I'm looking at resources, I want to think of time banking. So if I'm putting work into something, is it going to save me time, effort, expense down the road? So if I have to put in a little bit extra now to make that work, that's really going to help me later on. So sustainability becomes a big part of this. So with OER, you share in the ownership. If you develop it, you kind of maintain the rights to it and what you allow other people to do. If you're grabbing OER from another source, we want to be able to add to that content and license, but we get our copy. So regardless of what happens to it, what we did is ours. I mentioned the layering, and then we also want to make sure that what we create can be platform agnostic. So it doesn't matter necessarily which learning management system somebody uses, if it can be made available in different formats. Doesn't matter if they're using Google Docs or Office 365. It doesn't matter what type of device or what browser or software they use. OER helps us open up all of these. And then just the continual development and improvements for accessibility and design. Captioning, audio descriptions for videos. Some of these things weren't all that easy for us to do in the past, and it's becoming easier and easier. So as those new tools and possibilities become available, we have access to go back and improve upon our own content. So I did want to just share some examples about how we use open educational resources at 287 in some different ways. And one has a lot to do with the innovation and collaboration. So because we work closely with districts in the Minnesota Partnership for Collaborative Curriculum, we get to talk about what other districts are doing. What does their learning population look like? How do they set up their classes? What kinds of needs do they have? And then we try to help come up with solutions that might work in that setting. So again, it's not in the stuff that there's value in this topic, but it's in the interactions with other people. And we know that innovation comes from collaboration and helping to solve those kinds of problems. Again, you'll just see that come up again and again, the concept of adding layer upon layer to what we're doing. We have programs within 287 that are blended programs, so students get a lot of their instructional content and assessments through a learning management system, but they're also interacting on previously a daily basis in the same place with their instructors. So now this becomes an easier leap for them because the students already know where to access the instructional content. Now they're going to be tasked with developing their sense of community and support online, but the content now isn't their primary concern for what's going to happen moving forward. Our online program, Northern Star Online, has served statewide students across Minnesota. So we've been really trying to replace courses that we were paying for with courses built around open educational resources. And as we free up the expense used to subscribe to these courses or pay for licenses, we can now pay for positions like instructional designers, support staff, more teachers. That's really kind of changed the nature of what we're able to do with Northern Star Online. We can continue to offer more and more courses. We can develop courses that people have requested that we previously didn't have. So our capacity grows as our adoption of open educational resources has grown. And then accessibility certainly has become a really large component of what we do because we're an intermediate district and serve a large percentage of our students who are special ed. We need to make sure that what we're developing is going to work in many different kinds of settings for different types of learners with different needs for how they access those materials. And OER is what allows us to open that up to lots of different learning populations. And then just the concept of equity. As we learn more about equity topics, we can go back and add that layer to our curriculum as well and make sure we can start working on anti-racist curriculum, be more inclusive of LGBTQ plus population. So make sure that everybody gets a chance to see themselves reflected in the content that they're working with and see the connections to their own lives, which helps support the social component of the classes then. So that's a really important part. I think that we're about to see just how important it was. Very naturally, teachers in the classroom could create a social component in their classes and build community without really thinking about it too much, because humans are really good at connecting and finding ways to include people. But when we shift to a digital or online format, sometimes educators forget the time and care that went into that aspect of their classes. So not having to worry about content, but now being able to build in chances for interaction is going to be, I think, a little easier for the programs that have this content that they own and can edit. And so I mentioned our online use with Northern Star Online, which I think has been a really integral part of how OER use has happened across the state. So we have all kinds of examples now that we can demonstrate its effectiveness. The course completion rates for our OER classes is just as high, if not higher, than the vendor courses that we pay for. And then we can start building in more interactive kinds of options through our learning management system, progress indicators, automated feedback loops, H5P resources that I'll talk about in just a minute. Those kinds of interactive materials make it easier for us to present review opportunities for students, so that we can really make sure that they've learned the content before moving on to some of their summative assessments, when that might be too late for them to go back and do anything about. These lots of opportunities for practice, because it's all built into our system in different types of ways, means that learners are more prepared going into more of the high stakes assessments in the class. So I do want to talk about H5P for a minute. You'll see an example where there are lots of different types of modules. The one on the screen now is showing how a drag and drop type of activity works. These kinds of modules can be built into a learning management system through plugins, or some of them even have them built right into the system itself now. But these could be created in a few different ways. If you had a WordPress site, for instance, you could build them in WordPress and then embed them into your courses or link out to them. What I like about being able to integrate it with your learning management system is that it will actually feed into the gradebook as the students are doing them in your class. If you're linking to them, it becomes more of a practice activity. But there's drag and drop. Students can speak words directly into their submissions, and it will do a pretty good job at identifying if the answer was correct or not. And this also works for different languages. So we piloted a lot of these with our Spanish 1 course. And students, you can select the language and students will speak. It will even identify if their accent is appropriate based on the teacher selection. Different types of flashcards, fill in the blanks. The interactive video, where you upload or paste a link to a video, you can have it pause at particular stopping points in the video, and questions might pop up, opportunities for reflection. So that can approximate the classroom a little bit, where you may be playing a video for your students and you would want to pause it and discuss it. This opportunity, or this gives students the opportunity to do that on an individual level, when before in a classroom you might have the same students answering over and over again and being the ones to participate, and some of those shyer students that don't often speak up. Now everybody gets to be included and responsible for demonstrating that they know what's going on. And if the students need to leave for whatever reason and come back, it'll pick up where they left off. So really, some really cool tools built into some of these objects. So I encourage people to check them out. I share links in the notes and at the end of the presentation. And I wanted to make sure that I talk about some areas where open educational resources have been evolving that maybe people haven't really considered before. I know a lot of times when people are talking about it, they focus on math and English primarily, but OER now exists in all types of subject areas. So this example from the New World of Work is focusing on essential skills around adaptability, digital fluency, self-awareness, social diversity awareness. So we can integrate those kinds of topics now into our career prep courses, business courses, and then other types of classes. Some of this New World of Work content made its way into a recent project that was facilitated by the Minnesota Department of Ed for career and tech ed teachers, and we make those resources available now to everybody through our OER MN site that is maintained by the Minnesota Partnership. There's even OER in the mental health world, so there's curriculum now for high school students around mental health concerns. They provide presentations, videos, handouts, all kinds of resources and lesson plans. That's one of our new courses that's being developed now for Northern Star Online, where we took these resources then and created a learning pathway around them with some assessments, and we can combine those resources now with other resources from a psychology textbook from OpenStax or other open educational resources and health textbooks. So we can really build out something that it doesn't look like it's something from all these different sources because we have the permission to modify it ourselves. So as we gather from these other places, the learner wouldn't ever really know that it was coming from different sources. They would see it as a Northern Star Online project or course, for instance. And so one of the ways we found some of those textbooks was through the Open Textbook Library maintained by the University of Minnesota. And this is an example now of grabbing some of these textbooks that may be at a higher level. There are a lot of open textbooks now at the college level. And if that readability is too high, what we've done is pasted some of that text that is Creative Commons licensed into a tool like Rewordify, where we can then reduce or increase the readability. We can select the difficulty setting and then just play around with some of those features, generate vocabulary lists, and then we can take that text, review it, make sure it still means the equivalent thing, and then use that as the course text. So we've taken a college textbook now on a topic that might be aligned to high school standards or middle school standards, and present it to students in a way that's more accessible for them. And then before we jump to some questions, I just want to put out some tips as people are looking for all of these free tools. It's really important to let people know they're using OER when they're using OER, because that's what helps spread the word that this is an available option. When it comes to trying to get curriculum groups or districts to adopt open educational resources, we've found through the work of Dave Ernst at the University of Minnesota that he doesn't ask people to just use OER. He asks people to come in and review it, so that they're given a review rubric, and they're tasked with looking over the resources and then providing feedback on it. And what he found was that a lot of the people who come in to review end up adopting the resource in their own courses. And then what I would suggest, just when I was talking about these free materials now being offered for a limited time by all kinds of education vendors, don't get burned. Even with OER, sometimes you'll see something really incredible that's out there that you'd like to use. When you find those things, make sure to kind of recreate them in your own system and platform, and save what you can as you find them if you think it's valuable. There have been a few times now where I'm really glad we did that, because the organization that created them maybe lost funding and couldn't sustain the hosting costs any longer, but we were able to save them and continue to use them in our district. And if we do that, then we can turn around and keep making those available out in the community. So if you find those things that may be interesting, it's possible you could still get them if you went and used the Wayback Machine on archive.org and find some archived version of a website, but we don't just want to rely on these archived web pages. We want to have these materials and then continue to develop them out. The other thing I would suggest is make sure you reach out and ask people for permission. I know that through the work with the partnership, we've interacted with all kinds of organizations like tolerance.org or the Minnesota Humanities Center or Cultural Jambalaya, where they just weren't aware of Creative Commons licensing and what that would mean for them and how that would encourage teachers to use these in an academic setting. So as we talk about how we can make these available to learners across the state, they're more than happy to let us include these materials in our resources that are open licensed, as long as we use their specific terms of use and permissions. So just because something isn't necessarily OER, if it's put out there for free and it looks like they want teachers to use it, reach out to them and let them know that this is something that would be important so that people know that they're able to start using it. So I don't want to go too much longer than this. I want to make sure there's lots of time for questions. I have a doc in the notes for today. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/OER go-to, and bit.ly/OER go-to. And in that doc, I also added a link to questions and answers. So lots of questions that have come in from people trying to wrap their head around what OER is, some of the myths that may be out there about them. And I try to answer them as thoroughly as I can, but feel free to reach out if you're not sure what those particular Creative Commons licensing might be, or as I get questions about OER, I try to update that document and keep providing whatever answers I can surrounding their use. So we're trying to share everything we do right now. We're working on a massive wave of professional development as we transition into what school is going to look like here for the rest of the year, and we'll be sharing those too. And I'm really encouraging anyone who's watching this to reach out to your district leadership and ask if you can assign your work Creative Commons licensing and share what you've been working on so we can really help support each other, especially in times like this. So I'll turn it back over to Jeff and see if any comments or questions have come in, and we'll try to. So.
Thanks, John. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. There were two questions that I'm going to bring up right now that were asked in chat, and for the rest of you, you may be able to unmute your own mics actually in this setting and ask directly. But if you'd rather just ask in chat, now is the time to put questions in the chat box, and we can go from there. But John, the first question that came up in chat is about the MPCC courses, and actually I'm going to broaden this a little bit, like as a place to, where people can start right now, is the MPCC a good place to start right now in your estimation if people are looking for like course content to move online? Is that something you would recommend, and are they standards aligned?
Yeah, so the driving force behind the Minnesota partnership was to make Minnesota standards aligned curriculum for English language arts, math, science, and social studies. So in grades 3 through 12. So you will find content to address all of those academic standards. I think looking at them first as maybe supplemental resources. So what we do for Northern Star Online a lot of times is we take those courses, and then in the course of about, I would say, 40 to 60 hours worth of work, can convert them into our learning management system, something suitable for an online student. They were not written to be online courses. They were written to be facilitated. So these could not be sent home as packet works. They were not written to be textbooks, though you could create your own PDF files from these resources. They're developed, all the content is developed in Google Drive, using Google Docs and Google Slides primarily, but there are some embedded features that might not translate well to a printed page. But there's certainly thousands of pages of documents that could be used that way. Did I answer the question sufficiently?
I think so. Yeah, I think you did.
I would just add, we make those available in multiple formats. So there are Moodle versions that can be restored into any learning management system like Canvas or Schoology. We can make the common cartridge backups available into, so people could put them into D2L or Blackboard or something like that. If you were using Google Classroom, which I don't really consider a learning management system, but you could still use things that way by linking out to them, or you would make your copy of the resources, which you're completely free to do, and edit them however you see fit. The only thing I would ask people to do is if you edit one of our resources because you're making it better and including more, please share it back with us. We want to make those same kinds of improvements available to everybody in the community.
Great. And then the second question was about the H5P resources, John.
Yeah.
Is the drag and drop accessible? So oftentimes like interactives like that are not accessible, but has that been tested for accessibility?
Yeah, so I'm going to paste a link to the doc. They have a list of all of their modules and which ones they have run through testing and have deemed accessible. So I want to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing here, but they identify pretty clearly based on testing, and they have a color-coded chart on which of their modules are accessible and which ones they're working on. And sorry about the typing. Second time I did that today. I will add that link on their accessibility documentation into the notes for today.
All right.
I'll add it right now.
Those are all the questions that I have in the hopper right now. If anybody wants to make their mic hot, if you do the hand raise, I can unmute you, or you can go ahead and ask a question in the chat. And
I will add that I know that the H5P site is a little slow today, but when we make ours, we host them ourselves. They say that their drag and drop and drag the words are accessible. So they test with screen readers like NVDA and Chromebox.
yeah, so usually, I mean, in my experience, those, like the way they do accessibility with those is like as you tab through, it will name the choices, and then you can press enter, right, and it will enter that selection into the box, right?
And I haven't done the keyboard navigation with that tool myself, but their goal is WCAG 2.0 AA support. So that's a higher level than I think we get from a lot of our other vendor materials.
But that was pretty cool. Like, I'm really glad you showed those H5P resources, because a lot of times, like, what people will say is like, OER is great in concept, but like we don't get any of the flashy interactive that we love from the
Right.
vendor content, right? So I'm
Yeah,
really
that's why I like to show the FET resources from the University of Colorado. That's why I like to talk about some of the math resources on Hippocampus from NROC. There are a lot of things out there that millions of dollars have gone into developing and sustained funding. H5P is funded by Mozilla. I know that NROC gets funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates and Hewlett Foundation. University of Colorado puts significant resources into their FET materials. So it isn't just that someone created something and shared it. These are like organizations putting their financial resources into the creation of these. And for Northern Star Online, we've really made a big push to putting our content into H5P now, just because of that interaction and the interactive video, and there's just so many different options now that we could do on our own before, and this really supports our next wave of course development.
So a question came through privately to me. Teachers who haven't experienced OER could quickly become overwhelmed. What are 1 to 2 tips for beginners?
Yeah, so I think that's happening now anyway, like with all this free vendor stuff that's out there. I mean, everything coming in front of us right now is overwhelming. So what I would do is target those things that you're not really that happy with right now. So with Northern Star Online, we target the courses that may have lower completion rates. We'll target assignments that have, because we can access our data, we know which assignments students aren't doing the best on. So we'll find the lowest scoring assignment in the class and target that one for replacement. So really start to look at which things that you're using now just don't really feel as engaging as they could be, or where you could use some support, and then look to OER to help fill in some of those gaps and let that evolve.
And kind of related to that, John, in this time, like, what would you have the same advice for people who are just kind of looking at, moving their courses online gradually, like starting the same way, or is there some other, way that you would suggest they start?
Yeah, so right now the fastest way for us to get started with 287 courses, Northern Star Online courses, has been to take a Minnesota partnership course that already has the pathway, the structure, the standards alignment and unit planning built in, and then convert that into our platform, and then we go back in and edit with all of the things we know how to do. We'll do the same thing with a book from like OpenStax, for instance. We'll update readability, but we can break apart those chapters. We can convert some of their assignments and questions into quizzes that give real-time feedback. There's a lot we can do just because the permissions allow us to do that. So taking something that's more complete for us has sped up the process, and not just going out to say, OER comments and finding a lesson, but really trying to consider like how we might just quickly put together a course.
And can you address, the notion of OER? We had it in our title to get people's eye, but like to consider free. OER really isn't free, is it? So like, what do people have to consider on that side?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on how you're going to use it. If you have kind of a traditional way of delivering content, a textbook might be pretty close to what you're already doing now. It really would require a lot of other use. Where it comes in is that you're now responsible for it. If you find an error in a vendor course, you have someone you can complain to. If you find an error in a course in content that's open educational resources, like we've found on something like CK12, well, we can reach out to them, and we often do, and I've done this with OpenStax. They'll change it eventually, but you can do it right away. So the idea that when you find an error, you can fix it. With textbooks, that's a harder proposition. They might fix it in the next version, but who knows when that's going to come out.
So it's way more responsive, but there might be cost, like what I'm getting at is there might be cost to districts for writing, right? Like they're already spending some money sometimes for curriculum writing, but like there might be costs for writing, there might be costs for like tech integration to support this, right?
Yeah, it really depends on what you're doing, what your learning population looks like. So using a partnership course, for instance, you probably would want to go in and edit some of those pages just to kind of customize them for your own course, your own students, maybe change out some of the references. We try to reference Minnesota locations and scenarios as much as we can, but if you have others, it does take work to personalize them for your own district, but it's no more work than if you take a textbook and tried to personalize it for your learners. So what I've tried to get at is it's really an equivalent use. So if I go into a product that I'm paying for, I still have to learn their system. I still have to learn their layout and organization. I still have to figure out what I can do with it. OER is the same way. I mean, I personally feel like the default version of everything sucks. So when I get something, I'm going to change it. I'm going to try to make it better for my learners. So for me personally, it's no more work than it would be if I grabbed something I was paying for.
So Ben had a comment and question related to that. So he says, how often does a school perform curriculum reviews? Curriculum needs to be vetted on a regular basis, and there's definitely a cost to OER or independently created curriculum, but that might be built in. I wonder if the follow-up to that is that might already be built in if you're kind of doing it that way in your district already, right?
Right. So instead of these reviews for different things that are out there, we put that time and expense into having people update. I mean, the time is the same, the expense is the same, it's just different kinds of work. I see there's a question in there about difficult to vet. So when you're vetting and comparing to vendor content, I've seen this go in different ways. So I know that a lot of curriculum groups have a rubric that they use to score materials before they select which ones. I have found that some of those rubrics are skewed towards the vendor side over OER. So you may see something like, is there a teacher version? Well, in the Minnesota Partnership courses, there's no teacher version, but there are teacher resources and documents and unit plans and standards alignment. They just kind of appear in the context where they're coming up. So there isn't two places to look, but those things are hidden in student view. So unless people kind of know what they're looking at, it might look different enough that it would score lower on one of those curriculum review cycles. I think what Dave Ernst does at the U of M is he trains people on how to review, and then they go in and look at the content and provide their feedback. So having someone in your district that knows what people are going to be looking at and can describe where the teacher materials are, where the assessments are, where the standards alignment is, that all matters.
And yeah, kind of going back to getting started, I was thinking while you were talking about this is that, like, for right now, 3/4 of the year is behind us, right? And so you don't really, need to think about doing an entire course right now. You're thinking about doing, like, the quarter or whatever you think you are going to do yet this school year for learning objectives, right? So that might make it a little bit more manageable, at least from a cognitive perspective.
Right, and I think there's still some districts out there wrestling with what to do over the next few weeks, and some are lucky enough to have an extra week of spring break built in now next week. But you could really focus on what are some of those social emotional learning activities. How are you going to build your community with, really that social component as you are, if you can get a handle on how you want learners to connect right now as we figure out what does a schedule mean, how much time should be spent on learning. We have some time now because right now kids aren't going to be jumping into academic content, I hope. I hope we're not going to be, right back to business as usual, trying to focus on just the standards and learning targets. I think we have some time to focus on just the mental health of our learners. So while we're doing that, as we're kind of trying out what this new schedule might look like in our own settings, that could also buy us some time for developing out some OER. And because everything's new, go ahead and be bold and try something really new, like adopt one of these courses and see what happens, because there's never going to be a better time where students are more open to change than they are right now. And this is the time.
Wow, that's a great point, and I think that's a great point to end on. Thanks everybody for being here today. If you have further questions, John has already put himself out there to be the point of contact for all things OER. And I just appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedule today to be here. Thank you very, very much. And the recording of this will be posted on the Minnesota Online Teachers Network site as soon as it's available. What you're going to see first is a link that will take you to the WebEx environment where you can play this back. It will only have the auto captions that are being generated right now during this live talk. But as soon as we can download this and close caption it, we will re-upload segments of video that will have closed captions. So please, if you're going to send people to a place to look for resources,